Hello. Good evening, my Trues Clues aficionados. I hope that you're staying safe out there, paying attention to life's trues clues around you, watching out for you and watching out for your fellow man. And with that being said, I am doing my month of women perpetrators, which is interesting to me because I think that male and females are totally driven by two different emotions. Maybe sometimes there's a crossover, but a lot of times where it really gets down to you and drives you is different. Although it seems like a lot of the circumstances can be similar, having a bad upbringing, some kind of disconnection, maybe may be made to feel less than other human beings, especially those in your family. Can create a lot of anger, and that anger left unchecked in some individuals can definitely grow and boil over, and they become perpetrators, and the rest of society is left to pay for their hole in their heart, so to speak. So with that, let's get started here. My perpetrator is going to be a female, and her name is Juana Barraza, also nicknamed Las Mata Viejitas, the killer of old ladies. And what's interesting to me is that name, La Mata Viejitas, is a very serial killer historical name in Mexico. Other people have done this very same crime and have had this name for certain periods. And I guess this was Juana's time period to hold on to this name. And we all know that women crime is out of control in Mexico. And so I don't know if this helps or hurts or whatever the hell it is, but nonetheless, it's true. It's what happened. And I'm a big deal wrestler fan. And I'm a third generation wrestler in my family. We do have Mexican culture in my background. And some of my best memories are watching wrestling as a child and sharing wrestling with my children. I know the whole thing, it's not real and acting, but you still got to be in some kind of shape to go through the kind of craziness they put themselves through. And not to say anything of the storyline, there's always some interconnection. But besides that, there's always good and evil, and the fight of good and evil always will prevail, right? So she was arrested and sentenced to 759 years in prison on 11 counts of murder in the early 2000s. They found several old women strangled in the city of Mexico. Coming to find out, they were Juana's victims. Experts believe that her actions were in consequence of her alcoholic mother, who sold her to a man for 3 beers. That's what I said, sold her to a man for 3 beers. This same man abused her when she was only 13 years old. As she became an adult, I guess she had a fire in her heart that was looking for a place to set things on fire. She used to wrestle under the name of La Dama del Silencio, the Dame of Silence, the Woman of Silence. She wasn't a great wrestler, however. You mostly could find her selling popcorn. If she wasn't selling popcorn, you'd find her at the bottom of the card. Since she wasn't that good at her job, she often wore a butterfly mask, striped pink leggings, fuzzy orange hair, which didn't help much either. And apparently she got hurt quite often too, because she wasn't that good at it. Not to mention, when she took off her butterfly lucha mask, which you're not supposed to do, the woman born Juana Dinara Berzaro Samperio looked as though she could be your mother at the same time and the same way her name hinted. She lived under the radar for so long, and that's probably what helped her to get away with these murders for so long too. And on January 26th of 2006, after being arrested on suspicion of killing between 42 and 48 elderly women, that's right, between 42 and 48 elderly women, making Mexico's first recorded female solo serial killer. Now, isn't that just a brand you want to hold on to? Police said she'd come chose that name because she said, "I'm quiet and I keep to myself." She kept to herself until it came time to kill somebody, I guess. She quietly snuck into the victims' lives as well, posing as a visiting nurse just as selflessly help with their care before brutalizing and strangling many of them with a stethoscope cord. Barraza was born September 27, 1957, in a rural area situated north of Mexico. Barraza's mother, Huestes, and was an alcoholic as well as a sex worker. I'm sure her life wasn't too good because it's hard to have emotions when you have emotions ripped from your body. She was 13 when she gave birth to Juana. Juana's case is tragic as history is repeating itself, as her mom, Justa, had herself been sold and made into a sex slave. She gave birth to Juana when she was just 13 years old. Conclusion: trauma gives rise to more trauma, which gives rise to more trauma, right? It's a vicious cycle. And somehow or we another, as people, have got to treat each other decently and find out a way to stop this kind of violence. Until we do, we will suffer all as human beings. Her father, a truck driver, left Barraza at 3 months old. Her mom was tired of his philandering reports, which stated he had fathered as many as 32 children. Oh my God. He concedes himself that he lost count of how many children he had. Samperio, who felt pregnant shortly after meeting Trinidad and gave the care of her daughter away to an elderly man named Jose Lugo in exchange for 3 bears. And I think just knowing that made Barraza really pissed off and angry. I mean, how little can you matter to the person that's supposed to take care of you? 3 freaking bears? Barraza was 12 at the time this happened, and a year later she was pregnant. You know, she probably didn't have a choice. This guy probably beat her, raped her, whatever the hell that he's going to do to her. She was a possession. And she miscarried and fell pregnant again when she was 16. She miscarried one more time. She was held captive with this despicable piece of human being for 5 years, and all the while her mother lied to the rest of the family and claimed that she had escaped to start a new life, somehow, somewhere on her own, of her own free will. Eventually, the family found out and they saved her. The mother eventually died of cirrhosis in 1980, and that's when Barraza felt liberated enough to escape the horror of her existence and to flee. She went to Mexico City. Not even at 20, she learned to read, and she never learned to read or write. It is a resentment that she felt towards her mother for allowing her childhood to be so wretched, so fearful, so abusive, never dimmed, and apparently she needed to get that anger out even if it wasn't on the right person. And that was okay with her. I mean, she had her own reasons for doing what she did, right? A handful of marriages followed, many of which were violent, and still they resulted in 4 children. Though some reports place the number at 7, and who the hell really knows? I mean, with this type of thing, number of things could have been happening here. We all know that she's brave enough to put an end to things if she sees fit. That's pretty scary. The very idea of how abusive she is and the abusive relationship she was in, anything could have happened to her kids. I hope she cared about those kids at least. Her eldest child was expired at the age of 24, never recovering from injuries sustained, depending on conflicting reports that you've heard, from being attacked with a baseball bat or being shot during a skirmish between a rival gang and his gang. At trial, it was stated that this was her boiling point. Her rage began to spiral out of control. Her second child, a young girl, married young and left home early. though at the time of her mother's arrest she was living close to her mother in a first-floor rental on the eastern edge of Mexico City. It's where Barraza lived with her 2 children, a boy 13 and a girl 11. The elder sister stepped in when the mom was taken away. Most of her life she committed crime. It started small and then it grew over time. And in 1985, at the age of 19, after the birth of child number 4, she began to steal from shops. The money from her wrestling gigs wasn't enough. Obviously, she wasn't doing that good in wrestling. Just to make ends meet, she moved back home again, and she moved on to home burglary as well, pawning the jewelry and other values she found in the process. Anything she could help to make her a little bit, she'd obviously, would lift it and try to resell it. Then in 1996, she and her friend Sally Tapia Martinez came up with a great new plan and enterprise. They both dressed as nurses and would rob elderly people who lived alone. Yeah, because those suspects are so easy to take advantage of and probably too scared to say anything. There's no way for them to fight back or do anything. You just beat the shit out of them, take what you want, and be on your way. It's believed that her first murder took place then. The first murder was victim 64-year-old Maria de la Luz Gonzalez Anya. She had been strangled and beaten, and her body left strangled, sprawled out on the couch. That lady obviously had a lot of pent-up anger and was just releasing a torrent of anger on anybody within her reach. The following year, beginning with 84-year-old Guillermina Leons Orpreza on March 2nd and ending up with Alice Cota Duke on November 28th. Brazos is believed to have taken 7 more lives that year. The annual body count hit 14, including 70-year-old Maria Dolores Martinez Benavides, who was strangled with a stethoscope so violently that her neck snapped in 2005. The year before Barraz's capture, the death toll would reach 18. Her oldest victim, second to last, Maria de los Angeles Hernandez, she said had been strangled with her own scarf. Her face was beaten to a pulp, and strangling is a very intimate way of killing somebody. You have to be up close and personal. It's not something that goes away right away. And what kind of anger could she have had to have, pummeled these people in the face as well? I mean, crazy bitch. Crazy bitch is right. I mean, really? What the actual? And the fact that she almost immediately, picks up and leaves the scene. The theory had been developed that the killer may be helping in the role of a government official, lulling victims into the false sense of security by offering them a chance to sign up for some kind of social welfare program. Yeah, she was kissing ass and making out like she wanted to help take care of them, and she was a caring soul. But, of course, she had an ultimate motive. We're dealing with a brilliant mind. Bernardo Batiste, then chief prosecutor in Mexico City, was quoted as saying at the time. Other theories are less plausible. I would go with that one, I think. At one point it was believed that just because 3 victims owned a print of a painting of an 18th century French artist named Jean-Baptiste, boy in a red waistcoat, that the murders were somehow connected through this art. Similarly, after a perceived break in the case in October 2005, it was suggested that too many that the killer had maybe ended their life. I don't think that's true. These people just didn't know what the hell to do. Nobody believed that the murderer could be a woman. Only 15% of serial killers are thought to be female. The norms about the serial killers are changing all the time. There's really no one mold, because just like what you find beauty in a person, what you find sexually gratifying, there's deep inner needs. I'm sure there's some classifying things that you can pull out, But I think serial killers kill for all kinds of different reasons. They just act about it in the same way. Little assholes. I don't know. It's kind of confusing. And another thing that was keeping things from being identified is multiple witness statements claimed that they saw a killer leaving, but nobody knew for sure whether it was a man or a lady. Because of the body shape and type, it looked very manly, but then it would be dressed up as a lady. And because nobody thought of a killer being a female, it was really fucking things up. You know, they're like, is it a lady? Is it a man? What is it? And they even put out information saying that it was a homosexual male with some kind of anger problem towards old women, maybe his mom or his grandma. And it was misleading to people because they really didn't know what to look for. Even though people had seen it, they would describe the person and say, broad-shouldered woman in a dress. That kind of fit her because she was a wrestler and she did have a different kind of physique opposed to a lot of other women. And the historical precedent in the county for cold-hearted female killer, there was also two other sisters, Delfina and Marie de Jesus Gonzalez. And between the early 1950s and 60s, they operated a prostitution place, and for what research has been done, they were going around being serial killers as well. And these women, they called their prostitution ring Roncho Angel. The source of the talent came from kidnapping young women after they responded to ads placed by the sisters requesting employment as housemaids. Instead, they were forced into doing huge amounts of heroin and cocaine, and then they were pimped out. And then once they lost their looks or couldn't perform or wouldn't perform, they would be killed. Police found 80 bodies, women, 11 men, and several fetuses when they raided the sisters' property. And when asked how the bodies had gotten there, one of the sisters reported they claimed the food hadn't sat well with them. Now, if that isn't a crazy bitch. Mexican authorities mostly focused on Mexico City's transgender community because of reports the suspected person was wearing women clothing and looked like a girl. 49 people who were brought in for questioning, but to no avail. They didn't find anything because they were looking in the wrong place. The LGBT community was outraged, but who gave it a crap, honestly? They were trying to find the people. They were just turning whatever stone they could. I'm sure they wasn't really trying to insult them, but I know that Mexico is not very gracious to them either. I'm pretty sure in 2003, the police were more or less clutching at straws and released 2 witness sketches. And that's where I'm saying they didn't know whether to go male or female, so they put out 2 different case scenarios. One to fill a man and one to fill up a woman. And so that just kind of, I think, confused things for the public, unless you actually seen this person. Nonetheless, the resulting profile was pretty much cliche stuff. The killer is a man with a homosexual preference, the victim of childhood physical abuse. Couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, he could have had a grandmother. It was always he. And resentment of female with a vigor that caused him to lash out and kill these people. Of course, now we know that isn't true. Pretty soon they had an operation in place that was called Operation Parks and Gardens, because these people always lived by parks and gardens that she chose to kill. Thousands of flyers warning of stranger danger were distributed. Police even pay little old women to act as bait in the park areas. I mean, they were mad crazy to get these people, and I think the old ladies felt like it was worth it too. But nothing became of it. They apprehended Barraza a few months later. She was spotted by a living tenant of a woman named Ana Maria Dolores Alfaro. this woman fled the scene of what could prove to be her final killing. Inside the house with the 84-year-old landlady Reyes, Barraza was picked up by passing the police on her person. They found that she had a stethoscope. When she passed by the police, they caught her. Pension from a social worker, identification card, and once they obtained a search warrant and checked out her address, despite her literacy, found a room in which newspaper clippings of her crimes were methodically stored. And as we all know, serial killers do like to have their little mementos so they can go back and relive the atrocities in their spare time. And maybe she couldn't read, but she could look at the pictures and she could feel the energy that it had something to do with her. It's, weird as hell. So, after that, they realized they had the right person, and she also had an altar with some figurines, one to the Angel of the Poor, which is pretty good, popular and happy within the Mexican culture, and then she had a statue to the Day of the Dead, who would then personify itself as death. I only killed one little old lady, not the others, Barraza vowed when she first appeared in court. It isn't right to pin the others on me. Pause this craziness. When asked to provide motives for her crimes, she simply said, I got angry. She later added, I killed old ladies because my mother mistreated me, bit me, cursed at me, and sold me to an old man. Of course, that means go out and kill multiple old women who don't have a damn thing to do with you or your life. On March 31st, 2008, she was found guilty of 16 charges of murder and aggravated robbery and burglary, including elaborate setups to do murder. I don't know how it all works in Mexico. She was given 759 years in prison, however. She showed little emotions, as is pretty normal with psychopathic narcissists. May God forgive you and not forgive me, she said upon hearing the judge's words. She won't be eligible for parole until 2058, at which time she'll be 100 years old. These days, she spends her time selling tacos to the inmates at the Mexico City prison. Her specialty is some kind of pork thing that's a pork dish that's Yucatecan in its origin. She still has a certain amount of popularity in the Mexican culture. And there's a cumbia singer who even wrote a song about her. You know how it is, like Sarah Pico or, Al Pacino doing Scarface. There's just a certain, love of her in certain areas. And the song was something like an old wrestling lady shamelessly killing old women and calling out her little medicinal. She kind of screwed up, but she even got married to a 74-year-old Miguel Angel, another prisoner at the same facility who was serving life for murder. And I heard he was a vicious, vicious man. But the prison program has something there about trying to make connections and having emotions. And I don't know how you're going to do that when you're, one narcissist to the other. I don't know. But they saw each other a total of 3 times for a total of 2 hours, and they got married. And I guess the first time they got together and got to spend real serious time with each other, they figured out that they were not in love with each other and got a divorce. Yep, right. He's lucky that she didn't kill him too, because she had, I think, a lot more perpetration under her belt than he had under his. Anyway, I've always wanted to go to Mexico and visit there. I love Enrique Iglesias, and I hope to cover more crime in the future, both indigenous people here and Mexican women. Any women who doesn't get spoke for, I would like to speak for her. If you make any comments on any of the shows I make, please be kind. You never know who in the family of these victims are going to be looking at the programs, and they've had their hearts broken enough. I'm really going to work hard at growing my channel, so I'm going to ask you to please like and subscribe, I will see you next Monday with my next female perpetrator crime. In the meantime, stay safe out there. Pay attention to truth clues around you. Love you guys. Talk to you later.